So in my first Monopoly video, I played a game of Monopoly and tried to reflect upon the feedback loops that you got going after a while playing, when sort of one person always seems to be dominating the game and it's all just grinding down into total defeat for the rest of the players and full victory for the one who's got the monopolies. And I also reminisced on playing the game, playing Monopoly in my childhood, when many times me and my sisters would be occupying the table and playing a game for many hours, and maybe our parents came home and insisted on using that same table for dinner, for instance, and just casting one glance at the table, they would say, okay, this obvious, he's gonna win, he's got all the hotels, there's no way this is an open game anymore, and that's sort of the situation in Monopoly after the very strong feedback loops of the capitalist monopoly system have set in. So upon uploading that YouTube, the first Monopoly YouTube, I asked myself the question: what would be the equivalent for the Arctic or the climate system of a game that is already decided, just not finished yet, but it's already in the steady decline into an abrupt end. So I thought about it and looked at different graph candidates that I've seen and made, and more or less ended up with this plot here. This is it, isn't it? Here you got a 10-year trend for sea ice volume per biomass in University of Washington in America. And when it comes to climate and the ice volume and everything in the Arctic, it's kind of an open question in it that are you going to look at just one day, a day-to-day change in the ice? That's a problem because, for most of autumn and winter and spring, the volume will be going up. And is it a fair thing to say that, okay, so the volume is going up and the ice is increasing? Is that a fair state of the Arctic? No, not really, because it's supposed to grow back in the winter, right? So, but what time frame are you going to look at if you are going to present a representative graph about the Arctic? So the next logical stage from if you leave the one day-to-day thing is to look at the full year or the 1 year average, because that's gonna go down if you have a strong melting trend going. Even if it's winter, the running 365-day average is gonna go down, right? But because weather is weather, and these systems are huge and still quite chaotic, the normal thing to expect from year to year in weather is that it's colder and hotter. It's some kind of variation, and especially if you have a record year like 2016 or 17 following a record warm year, you're almost bound to have a slightly colder year, because that's the nature of records. It's not gonna go up and up and up from year to year, even though we have strong climate change, right? So you can also go further up from 1 day to 1 year and go up to 1 decade. It's sort of the next logical step for animals who have 10 fingers and use a 10 based number system. So if you leave the 1 day and the 1 year average and go up to 10-year average, then you have 3,650 day averages, and you can graph that decade average for every day in the satellite record, and you get this kind of graph, the blue graph, and the green one is just a polynomial trend line on top of that. So the satellite record for sea ice, it starts in 1979 and to 2018, and because every point in this blue graph is a 10-year average, you can only start in 1989, because that's the first time you have a full 10-year, right? You can't make a 10-year average without 10 years of data. So this graph naturally starts in 89 and it ends in November 2018 for the time being. And what you can see here is that very interesting. You have the latest increase. The last time the graph went up, the 10-year average increased. That was in 1993, so 25 years ago. It's been 25 years since the decade average had an increase, any increase, whatever size. So, for the young people born after 1993, they never experienced an increase in this decadal sea ice average. And the way to think about this is that this point represents the tipping point, that after 93 it's all going downhill. It's all going down, and it's just a matter of playing the last rounds around the sun or on the Monopoly table. It's gonna take a while for everything to finish, but it's all already set in motion, and there is no going back. So from all the way from April 93, the rule, the consequence of this, the rule here is that if you take any date, like let's say April Fool's Day, April 1st, 93, then you could compare it to the same day 10 years before. That's April 1, 1983. And the last of those 2 days would always have less sea ice volume than the first one 10 years before that. And that's when the 10-year average graph goes down. That's when the 10-year later date has less ice than the 10-year before date, because the new data is going into the 10-year average, and the former 10 years ago is going out of the 10-year average. It's leaving the average on the backside. So that's when you get a decline in the 10-year graph, and you see here we cross the 22,000 cubic kilometer line in October 98, and the 20,000 line in May 2005, and the 18,000 cubic kilometers line in December 2009, and the 16,000 in June 2013. We're closing in on the 14,000 line now. So what this means is really that, yeah, the game was for all intents and purposes, the game of the Arctic sea ice was over in early 1993, and we have got 25 years of, just going down and more feedback loops in the Arctic setting in and increasing in strength. And this is a game that can only be won by the open ocean, by the Blue Ocean event that is obviously in our near future. And even though you can't read from this graph exactly when we're going to hit zero ice, it's a one-way street. It's an irreversible decline down towards zero. So that's what I found out by playing a game of Monopoly during the Thanksgiving weekend. And yeah, I find that very interesting that you can get inspiration back from the game and into the real world and into the Arctic sea ice situation. And this graph is the equivalent of your parent coming back home and with one eyesight on the situation. They can say that, okay, yeah, this is a done deal. We don't have to finish this before we eat dinner. This is gonna go south, and yeah, that's it. Okay.
Call you up in the middle of the night, like a firefly without a light. You were there like a blowtorch burning. I was a key that could use a little turning. So tired that I couldn't even sleep. So many secrets I couldn't keep. I promised myself I wouldn't weep. One more promise I couldn't keep. It seems no one can help me now. I'm in too deep, there's no way out. This time I have really led myself astray. Runaway train, never going back. Wrong way on a one-way track. Seems like I should be getting somewhere. Somehow neither here nor there. Can you help me remember how to smile? Make it somehow all seem worthwhile. How on earth did I get so jaded? Life's mystery seems so faded. I can go where no one else can go. I know what no one else knows. Here I am, just a drowning in the rain, with a ticket for a runaway train, and everything seems cut and dry. Day and night, earth and sky. Somehow I just don't little out of touch, little insane. It's just easier than dealing with the pain. Runaway train.